Hello and welcome back to The Dive. Now, you guys say welcome back to me.
Welcome back to The Dive, Kobe.
We
missed you, Kobe.
So oh my God, I miss you guys too.
What season and episode is it though, Kobe?
I was just about to say it.
I was very curious. I'm sorry, I couldn't wait.
It's 6, episode number 17.
Ooh.
Oh my God. Special 2-part episode, actually. This might sound a little weird for viewers because we did a 37-minute long interview with 2 of the LoL Balance Team devs that we actually recorded before this, but we're going to put it afterwards so that you get Mark first thing in the morning.
I demanded I could sleep in more since I showed up. Then they can record their thing. I'll show up later.
Yeah. So we'll run through all the LCS.
You a little bit at the start, but now it's going to be out of order. But I just felt you should know that.
Also, yeah, I remember because Mark one time had this Pokemon sweater. I found one at the mall too.
Oh, you went to the
me
same.
out.
Yeah.
You got a long sleeve though.
I saw it and I decided to buy it. Yeah, because the shirt, the cut was.
How come you didn't wear that for the other part?
No, it looks stupid. I didn't want to say.
What the hell?
Yours didn't look.
You don't tell me off camera. On camera, you're like, by the way, I've seen you in that shirt 6 times.
You look
Never
like an
said anything,
idiot.
but you look so dumb in that. I can't believe you wear that.
Unlike mine.
I said that to you during the episode.
No preference. I've worn it a bunch of times and like, dude.
You know that shirt you wear all the time? You think you look really good?
Yeah, you know what, Kobe?
You look
Your
so
entire
dumb.
aesthetic sucks. I just never felt like telling you before. But now suddenly I'm motivated to tell you that you look dumb all the time.
It's just the cut of the shirt is a little weird.
You just couldn't pull it off, so you feel need to drag me down. I pull it off.
You know, Mark, you look great.
You know what? I don't even care because a lot of people tweeted at me after the first time I wore that. And they're like,
The
"Sick shirt, where do
Vaporeon
I
one?
get-" Yeah.
It's a cool shirt.
Well, I hope mine is as cool. I got Meowth because I always thought Meowth was
Because of Cat for Kobe.
Oh. He
Yes.
can have a cat, so.
Yes, and he's the coolest. He's the only cool member of Team Rocket. Let's be honest. So keeping with, you're trying to search for a cool member, maybe like Giovanni or something.
No, I was just thinking like Jesse and James are pretty funny.
They're classics.
They're
But
classics.
they're like too dumb. I feel like.
Yeah, Wobbuffet sucks. He was a bad addition.
When I was like 8 or whatever I was when I was watching Pokemon, though, I like Jesse and James.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I liked Meowth. So,
There you go. All right.
and
Well, LCS.
In keeping with our plan to strictly stay to LCS and get through this as quickly as possible, let's start with the standings, baby. We'll go right down from the top because it's really exciting. CLG, your boys at the top,
The Faith Age.
representing. I know we didn't have my graphic for the power rankings, but I did have them up
But we
there.
settled.
What'd you have them again? 5th
Okay,
or
nice.
Yeah.
7th? What'd you have them at?
It was either 5th or 6th. I think 6 probably.
In the episode, we mentioned where you had them for especially for the big stand.
But the improvement, the reasons for them, because I wasn't here for the reasons, is that Dokla actually has improved so much, and he's not. Fans are not going to give him credit for that, right? No. Let's be honest. Not a lot of them are watching the academy games, and a lot of the work that Dokla has been putting in, and it's bringing a new focus to CLG, because I talked to those guys a lot. And they all went over to Korea and played Sokyu and Scrims, and that's one of the reasons they had this interesting take on the meta, and adopted to it really quickly, I think, and effectively utilized a lot of the big power points, like the Senna, Seraphine, these types of things. And they still kept some of the tenets of the improvements that they used last split in some of the successful games. Like Palafox really intensely focusing on other lanes, him really looking not just for the classic Palafox melee mid lane carry for himself, but looking to set up both side lanes now that they have Dokla aggressive top and Luger to carry for later for bottom.
I'm stoked. I put them 6th last split. I was just a split too early, and I lost faith. I lost my faith
before your time.
I know, I was sad, but I'm very happy to be wrong, and I'm ready to completely be yep, 10th place was too low. They're even regardless of what happens the rest of the split, they won't be the last place team. Dokla, I knew he would be an upgrade. I just said I don't know if he'll actually be a carry threat, but then they played through him a fair amount. The problem last split was it was Luger or bust, and that was it. And
exactly.
Their bot lane does sometimes make mistakes. You can see it even this weekend. They died a couple times in that Sivir game. But
I love that, by the way. When he starts tier, he has teleport and he doesn't care. He's still up there getting 1 minion of experience instead of waiting for Poom to come back, and he dies. dies and he just buys a coal and teleports back and keeps on farming, baby. I was cracking up.
That guy's hungry. He's farming. He's feeding
I was
himself.
cracking up. That's how you play Sivir. Tier and coal.
You're there for the late game.
And teleport and farm.
But I think what impressed me the most was Dokla playing Jace, a champion that is maligned in NA as like a, oh God, NA Jace. And he picked it and he had good performances on it. They kind of played through it through lane phase. And I did like their comps as a whole. A lot of the times they were just ball comps. But I was impressed. I was very happy to see that, like, actually they made a lot of improvements.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much more bought in than I was. Like we talked about this a lot last week, but it's like 6 through 10 to me was like, I didn't see a big gap between any of these teams. So I wouldn't have been shocked really of any rearrangement there. And that's kind of now where I'm like willing to rearrange CLG 2 is like the upper end of the 6 through 10. Dokla obviously, and he should, had much more kind of lofty aspirations. He was talking on the desk, about how like their goal was, top 3 for Worlds. And like that's kind of
lofty.
That's like where he was seeing them as more like, going for the top 3. And Dokla also, I was surprised by
interviews.
Yeah, I was surprised by the fact that like he was only giving respect to Bwipo and Impact, right? And even when he got like asked about Someday, he was basically like, nope. and it was like, because as soon as he only said those 2, I was like, come on, somebody ask him about Someday.
Yeah.
And then Jad or whoever was like, well, what about Someday? And he was just like,
He's like, did I stutter?
Yeah, exactly. Like, did you hear me, boy? I was surprised by that. And also, I mean, Fudge to a lesser extent, I guess, because Fudge is role swapping back. But Fudge, when he left top lane, was really, really good. And also, I thought that individually, Fudge was also pretty impressive this weekend.
Yeah.
So I still have a lot of faith in him. So I was surprised by that. Like if Dokla really sees himself as the number 3 top laner in the league, because like that's basically how he was framing it, right? So I'm not that bought in at all, to that degree. And I would also say I still have concerns about what does this team look like without the kind of like Senna/Seraphine bot stuff. They did play without it in their game number 3. They brought out the Sona, but that game to me was more of a Golden Guardians throw than a CLG win. To be honest, I thought Golden Guardians had the had like kind of outscaled and they had the Azir and all this stuff and they were in a good position.
Free Baron.
And then they gave a free Baron. And then even after that, like their fight was really, really bad that lost. But CLG still, even disregarding that, I love that they came out with a strong read on the meta. I'm really interested to see if they have multiple like kind of reads or play styles, and they were much more of a threat than I thought they were going to be. So big thumbs up to Contracts and Dokla, and the whole team should be proud about their first week.
Excuse me, that Baron was not free. It was not a throw. It was bought by the wall.
Yeah, the wall.
That Palafox build. That was to me the funniest moment of the whole weekend. I was dying where he did the wall. And Freak's so excited, and literally everybody's just
like there's 5 gyms of a dashes, Freak
jumping over it, and then Azir waits like literally half a second at it for it to fall back down. But then
clones over,
but then
Q's over. They all.
But then Golden Guardians just leave after that because for whatever reason they decided they'd
never let them know your next move.
Exactly. It's one thing though. That actually kind of ties all our top teams together is that our top teams, our 3-0 teams, a lot of them were investing picks in high damage in this durability patch. And that high damage, guess what? Baron did not get durability update. So CLG actually burned that Baron really quickly. Golden Guardians thought they had time to go back to base, and they immediately came back towards Baron, and they Scryers it, but it's too late. You recalled CLG were all at it, and they've got a carry top laner. They have this 4.5 damage team that can kill it really quickly. So I think that was pretty interesting, and the fact that we had a lot of success of teams that were willing to embrace and still play damage, and a lot of aggressive moves.
Yeah, I'm very happy for CLG. I was doing on stream like blind nameplates off power ranking, like wipe your mind of the orgs, try and forget literally everything but the games this weekend. And I think you can even make a case that like
that's good. You're gonna need to wipe your mind of the Bud Light Ace. And
we're forgetting all of that. This is a brand new org, and I was like, who would be better in your mind? Obviously, I think a lot of people put Team Liquid 1 because the perfect game and whatnot, but like it's actually I think fairly arguable between CLG and EG. who had the more impressive weekend.
I think strength of schedule really kills your argument.
Well, you don't know the strength of schedule in theory because it's like mind wiped.
In theory. See? Mind wipe.
You mind wipe yourself.
Nice. That was a good lawyer move right there.
You've mind wiped. You don't know anything about any team in the league.
Yeah.
It's like you're just tuning into a brand new region you've never watched before.
Okay.
Which team would you think had a more impressive weekend? And like it's back and forth.
I could see that then.
The argument being like EG fell behind pretty heavily to C9 in that game. They lost to Baron, so like it's close, it's debatable, but I think that's cool that in theory CLG is one of the best teams in the league right now. I think when you do factor in,
you just gotta smooth your brain out a little bit.
Yeah, you get rid of some of those wrinkles, they'll buff them out. Those will buff right out.
They beat Golden Guardians, TSM, and Dig.
Yeah.
EG played FlyQuest, 100 Thieves, and C9.
Yeah. So obviously, taking into what we all actually know, CLG had a very easy strength of schedule, and they'll probably not stay undefeated.
They play
or
EG.
tied
They have FlyQuest and EG this weekend.
Yeah. So it'll be a good test for them. And I think to see actually how good they are, or was this like you're clearly better than some of the teams that were in that 6 to 10 shuffle you were talking about?
I mean, if CLG, like I'm like CLG, I believe that you're like a six-ish team, 6-7, something like that. I think that they could fall down. We'll have to see. Like I will be bought in after this weekend if they perform well again this weekend, because I do think most teams' read is going to be what Golden Guardians showed us. Everyone's going to ban Seraphine and Senna, right? And show that you can actually perform. Yeah. If that happens this weekend and they still look good, then I'm pretty sold. Because I think like if CLG finished 5th, 6th, like that's a coup. Like that's amazing, you know, for this org and for this roster. So maybe they really are getting undervalued, but I think they still have a little bit more proving, even though it was an extremely impressive week 1.
Yeah. Team Liquid doesn't have anything else to prove. On the complete opposite end of the scale, because they're retaining, the high-powered veteran roster. This is the one that I feel like nobody had questions on. I was like, okay, they're almost always our most consistent top team since franchising, basically. For LCS, there was that one blip year that they
blip split even because by summer they turned
exactly. But to me, it was even better than I expected, because Bjergsen played aggressively. Even though last year he got voted first team for mid lane for all LCS team, it was like, mid lane overall is kind of soft.
It's kind of because there wasn't a better candidate rather than he's dominated.
And it was like arguable, the other positions, but especially the LeBlanc game, I was like, damn, this is some vintage Bjergsen. He's getting in there. They're looking aggressive. And in their interviews from the Team Liquid players as well, they're all talking about, we're going to keep playing aggressive, even if right now it's durability patch. We want to create our own advantages. And it sounds like, Core JJ really trying to lead that charge, and they want to play through bottom a lot too. And that to me was better than I expected for Team Liquid. So I think even though strength of schedule again comes into question,
but they can't have done more.
They look great, exactly. With what they were given, they stomped it, and they got a perfect game.
Perfect game and 2 absolute stomps. Yeah. And I was really happy with what we saw from Bwipo too. Like even just the champion wise, like I watched a ton of him playing in Korea and boot camping, and like these were his big 3 champions in Korean Challenger. The Swain, the Olaf, and the Mordekaiser. And then I was thinking, all right, well, Olaf just got nerfed for top lane in the micro patch. Swain just got nerfed for top lane. I was like, crap, are we just not going to get them? And then he brought them all out. They all looked really good. So I was really excited by that, because I felt like this patch was going to be so good for him, and him to bring out those 3 champions that like were the big 3 that I had kind of identified from him, in solo queue, and slam with him in LCS is just really, really exciting, because like no one else was playing this stuff. So him to be able to bring out his own style and dominate with it is just really, really exciting.
I think all 3 lanes looked insane this weekend.
Yeah.
Santorum was maybe the most quiet because he was just like facilitating this, because bot lane had like the double bubbles on the Nami game, the double stuns on the Bard game, like Core JJ and Hans looked insane. The Bwipo game on Olaf and Swain, all these things you're talking about, the LeBlanc, like everyone had these insane carry games. 27-minute average game time for them.
It's pretty fast.
That is fast in any meta. That is killing kids quickly. And I'm excited about it because I was worried. I was like starting to like build this like, should Team Liquid fans be worried? Because yes, they're good, but are they going to win a title? Or is this going to be another one of these years where they spend a lot of money, they get 2nd or 3rd, they go to Worlds, they go 3 and 3, they go out, and there's really nothing to like hang your hat on for why it was a great year for them. And this is what I want to see all split long. It's just like crush everybody.
Bjergsen was 0 deaths the whole year.
If you die once, Bjerg, no.
I mean, he had 0 deaths this weekend.
Yeah, it was what, like 20-0 and I don't forget what it was. It was
something insane.
Yeah, he had 10 kills in the last game.
He's so durable. You just can't kill this guy. He's just so durable.
Crazy.
The only buffed Bjerg's durability. I just want to see this team keep this up because I want to see them dominate because this is what we were expecting earlier on. And in spring, they won lock-in, but then they were
first place in regular season.
They were first place, but C9 beat them when it was like the big clash. And then, like it just felt like we hadn't seen that next gear. And this was next gear.
This is, I think again, it's like because they had their feelings at the end of the split and, didn't do as well, I guess. Well, I mean, everyone got clapped by EG, but they got clapped by EG at the end. Mm-hmm. No one's going to give you the benefit of the doubt until you actually win. And I think with this roster, you kind of shouldn't. Right? Like this roster is not just supposed to win the region, it's supposed to crush the region. And I think that's why you buy all these stars. And that's why after last year, Teal's just like, well, who's the best players we can add, right? So I mean, there are incredibly high expectations and there should be for this team. Bwipo, I think his start this weekend was reminiscent of how he started in spring, but he definitely did not, maintain that level of dominance. The first couple of weeks and lock-in, it was like TL are winning just because of Bwipo. You remember back, like the rest of TL wasn't even playing that well, and Bwipo was just like forcing his team to win, right? And I think by the end and in playoffs, Bwipo was just kind of like, yeah, he's good. But he was not dominating by any means. He wasn't one of the best in the league. I didn't feel, or at least not playing to his level. Mm-hmm. Whereas he started this out like absolutely crushing the Olaf game, especially, but the other games are amazing too. I mean, the Olaf game, he did the most damage in the game when I think in that game that was also a Hansama Ezreal game. Yeah. It's like you're out damaging Ezreal as an Olaf, like you are slamming, right? So if he can maintain that level, then TL of course are like massive title threat.
Meanwhile, Evil Geniuses, baby, put them at rank 1 and they just cruise in from MSI. It's those young kids, they don't get hungover, Mark. It doesn't affect.
Take another shot.
Doesn't affect the young kids. And Impact, he's got the hangover cure, so he's fine. Honestly, though, the EG coming back, and you could see it in immediately like some of the first moves that they make, where you can see some of the changes in JoJo of what he learned and how like he came back so hungry and wanted to like destroy people in solo queue in lane. Like the LeBlanc Ari matchup, even though he messed up the first blood, he went for the flash play and he's going backwards. Has the burst damage right then. Yeah, you gotta expect charm when you're going under the tower for the chain.
The redive was a little troll.
That was troll, but I still like the mindset, and even with that, it was just like a little speed bump, and he just picks up right where they left off. Looking very aggressive. So they still had what made them win last split, which was crazy good team fighting, better team fighting than everybody else. And these aggressive looks, but they improved in the couple of the MSI things was some of the laning, but also, and mainly to me, was them directing macro. Throughout all playoffs, yes, they went on this crazy run and beat everybody, but it was basically all through, oh shit, we got to show up at this dragon or this baron and win a team fight, and then they would win the team fight. And you're like, well, they did it again. But this weekend,
what are you going to do?
They did it again. But this weekend, they were like, oh no, we're gonna direct the macro here. Danny pulls off the possible, counterplay on the bottom side of the map while the rest of the team takes Herald and forces and is moving the game along. So I think the macro and mid game massively improved for them while still retaining being, probably still the best team fighting team. Wait for the matchup with Team Liquid, but
it's really exciting. I mean, Bjergsen even referenced them in his interview, like talking about like how good they looked. They had 3 days of scrim practice, is what I had been told, and like Bjergsen even referenced that. It's like, well, they look pretty good, and they had 3 days of practice, and he's like, we did like a month boot camp in Korea, and then a couple weeks of scrims. So it's like that is scary, right? As long as they're not going to burn out or whatever. And I know they had a little bit of time, so that is good. But like, I mean, Abadaga was kind of getting gapped in lane by everyone, so I won't go on it too much. But the JoJo LeBlanc game, I mean, his initial dive would have killed him pre-durability change, so I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. The redive was troll, but the fact that he came back and then was just stomping him in lane with the enemy being given a first blood, it was like, oh my god, what are you doing to him?
It was rough for Abbe. We'll get there a little bit, but I also like just the champion diversity that they showed. I mean, it's not like it doesn't feel like they're fully. He was the only one. Everyone else played unique champs every single game.
Yeah.
Danny can only play Ezreal.
Yeah, one trick.
I mean, it's probably the best marksman on the current meta. Just generally, there's like other things you
besides the 4 that get banned every game.
I was like, wait a second. There's
of the ones that get 3, you ban 4, you pick Ezreal, and then you
of the ones that aren't better than it.
It's the Sennas and all the other ones. Yeah.
Go ahead and wipe that brain again, and you'll understand.
You don't get those other ones. It's the best one you're gonna get in the meta.
Yeah. It's the best you can do. You
the best you can do. You gotta
settle for Ezreal.
If it's up, you're gonna take it. Unless there's these other ones, but they're
not. Anyways,
they show a lot of champion diversity.
Keep going.
Vulcan on Enchantress support was actually something I was looking to see because he's been on Leona Nautilus duty for
the
last 3 years, and he finally got to play something else and looked pretty good on them.
Also, the Braum pick.
Dude, he was 1v1 in that Braum game.
It was a perfect Braum pick too. That was one of the best drafts that I've seen because you're pretty early on. 100 Thieves show that they're going to go, and it's actually nice that we're talking about 100 Thieves next because their matchup with EG was a perfect picture for both these teams right now, I feel like. But 100 Thieves show they're going to go, Kaisa Wukong were the first 2 picks. I think they followed that up with like Nautilus. They're like, we're going dive. And EG pulled the late Braum pick there for Vulcan, which was so good for all of their team fights, for all of the counter dive. He played it super well in addition to, having the other looks like you're saying. So yeah, I'm super excited. Never doubted him. EG at the top, baby.
I was drinking water. What are you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was trying to see if you wanted to get back in because you hadn't been talking.
No, I was like looking at my screen. I was drinking water, and then I look up and there's a finger at me like, "You're next."
Okay.
Like, oh shoot, I wasn't.
So
got called on in class when you're spacing out the window.
100 Thieves?
Yeah, we can jump to 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves looked pretty good. I think overall they looked strong. I think bot lane looked really good. Definitely like
Abbe Doggy.
He got focused, and he was talking about that in the interview. Like, even if you can't me, but like. He was down, 75 ADCS ish against Maple. I thought was getting absolutely clapped by JoJo. He did in the mid and late games come back and like in all those games on the R games find really good charms and like
out of lane great.
He charmed Tactical. That was like a big swing in that game. Tactical was getting picked a lot. That was another thing. But like. He was great out of lane, but I was pretty concerned about how his laning was looking. He also had a different read. Like I think he was the 3 straight R games, if I recall correctly. So like he was kind of picking differently, where a lot of people were like, Azir's up, I'm going Azir, or I'm doing Corki and so on, right? So yeah, he was three R games. He was even doing it blind, which is like much more like MSI meta. And it did get them their 2 wins, but like. Yeah, I just felt like if he was having that type of performance and his team wasn't performing so well around him, the performing okay later would not have mattered, right? And so it's like he kind of got bailed out because the rest of his team was doing well in those games. So like it was okay that he kind of was getting crapped on in lane. But I will say bot lane looked really good. That was like the big standout for me. FBI and Huhi I thought were playing very, very well.
Yeah, I still have a little bit concerns about this team just because even the TSM game, I think they were like 4 or 5K gold down before Abbe started finding those picks and stuff. There's the EG game. So I'm still a little concerned about this team in the slower meta because this is what we're talking about. Like closer dominates and then like
if you can't do stuff early.
Yeah, they feel like... I mean, I was happy their mid to late game carried them in the TSM game, but it's still something where if you look at goal difference at 15 for teams, they were 8th place with negative 610, which is... It's a small sample size. It's 3 games, yada, 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 but...
I'm concerned because for me, this split, one of the like minor kind of medium stories is that the mid lane got way stronger with just the return of Jensen and... JoJo, Hyperbolic, MSI, Time Chamber, playing against and pulling in Maple. But I really do feel like in some of the small things, just watching JoJo, it's almost like another new mid laner coming back from MSI after playing, 6 in a row versus G2 and Caps in his Faker games and stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely looks like he's continuing on his very quick ascent. So I really think mid lane compared to last split is significantly more competitive. And people already, I had been hearing like whispers about Abbe, for 100 Thieves. They're like, maybe even looking at other options and tweaks that they could make. But it's a little bit of, it's like kind of borderline there because he's still obviously very good. But it
hasn't looked really good since the start of spring.
And the competition has gotten stronger. So that's why I'm like, little.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be getting more on thin ice. What was you said they were 8th overall in
goal difference at 15 as a team.
So the funny thing about this is that their goal difference as a team is negative 610. Abadaga's is negative 640 at 15 individually. So
he's basically the entire goal.
He's more than the difference. So his team on average was actually slightly ahead, around even, and then played well late. But he was like more than that difference, which is like really concerning. And it is just a couple games. And yes, he did get ganked some, and there was some factors.
Well, and we were talking about strength of schedules as well. The Dig and TSM were the teams they beat. And of course, who knows exactly how it's going to shake out, but they're one top half expected team, depending on how hot you are in TSM. The only one you can be sure of was the EG game. So it is something where I think people will be watching 100 Thieves closely to see if they're going to get overtaken by C9 if they turn online or what, or if they're just going to kind of be like top half, but are you really a title threat right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's tough for Closer, right? Because I just think that like when I think of Closer's best games, it's always like, oh my God, this guy's ganking every lane at the same time. He's like killing everybody, and that stuff just feels harder to do. Maybe there'll be some balance changes that like make early action more incentivized, but I definitely was looking at like what are the two good teams that kind of need their jungler to dominate early to look really good, and it was like River, Closer. Those are the guys that I think like when these teams are looking at their best. It's because their junglers are running over the early game, and that's just harder to do. So, still definitely a concern for me.
I feel like they turned up the AC, made it even colder in here.
It's chilly.
They saw you put that on, and they're like,
"I'm wearing a jacket, and I'm
like,
chilly."
Sheesh. Golden Guardians are next in line. We've got a big tie here.
I was wondering where you were going to go, and
I'm just going by the graphic.
Okay. 4-way tie at 1 and 2.
That Mr. Azael pasted in here.
Mm-hmm.
Golden Guardians. Now, this team, like you said, there were some big bloopers. Baron going out of vision for too long for CLG, these types of things. I actually had a bit more confidence into this team
going into the weekend.
Coming into the weekend. It got shaken a little bit. I'm still not selling, I'm holding.
They're maybe the hardest team to place of the 1 and 2s, I would say. Like the other teams, as we go through them, I'll have pretty strong opinions on. But Golden Guardians, their first game was a total dud. They just got slapped down by FlyQuest. They
didn't even try.
It just felt like they were AFK. And like the thing about that is some teams, first game of the split, you don't have a draft that's like easy to play. I would say that was not an easy draft to play. It was like no hard CC with like Zin as your only front line. I guess Gnar when he megas out, but they just didn't play it well and they did nothing and lost. But then they looked more competitive in the next 2 games. The
second game was actually really good.
They were really good versus C9. They basically just controlled them the whole way through. And then the third game was, you guys said, a little back and forth at least, and then a big oopsie. So,
how do you think Ablaze is going to live in this new summer mid lane? Because some of the bloopers were from him, and I was really on the hype train the past even last year and stuff. So I'm a little bit hesitant there. I do think Stickside coming in is an upgrade. Over Lost. So I think that was a positive move for them.
Yeah. But, I mean, I didn't have them in like my top 5 anyway. I still think they could live towards like the upper half, like the top of the bottom, if you will, or whatever of the teams outside of that. I'm not at least writing them off that. Game 1 was obviously horrible. I mean, that was just reminiscent of the do nothing games that Dig had a year or 2 ago.
Or this weekend.
Where it was or some of those. Just where Golden Guardians was just they literally just didn't contest anything the whole game and then lost. It's like, wow, surprise.
Yeah.
Game 2 was really good though. And then game 3, my glass half full is I actually thought they were in a winning position against TSM until that Baron,
CLG.
CLG. And CLG went 3-0, right? So it's if we're putting CLG at 6-7, whatever, top of the bottom, then Golden Guardians probably should have won that game, right? And if they replay it a couple times, like
but how many times did we say that last split for them, right? They've thrown so many games. Like
that's a fair point. I mean, their early game was really, really good last split, but they would always find a way to lose. And maybe I'm giving too much the benefit of the doubt, but I'm at least not like just writing them off after this first weekend, because it was like, okay, one horrible game, one really good game, one game you probably should have won, but you didn't against a team that went 3-0. Doesn't really change my opinion that much yet.
Yeah, there's some teams I'm willing to knee jerk to, like CLG and EG. Like, well, I just mean like I put EG up. I put EG 3 or whatever, or 4, I forget, and it's like, okay, they're gonna be much better. The MSI hangover is not a thing for them right now.
Yeah,
or anyone.
Knee jerking is an involuntary action, so.
Yeah, but some things hit your knee and you're like, whatever. And some things hit it and you're like, wham. And Golden Guardians.
That's not how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to work every time, Mark.
My reflexes aren't consistent. There's probably some I don't know. There's probably some damage down there.
He's dead inside. You know, certain things just that doesn't react to.
I have joint damage. I don't know. Yeah. Either way, my point is Golden Guardians did not register. I'm still waiting to see.
Yeah.
All right.
So CLG
keep donking on that.
You're saying you need a couple more games.
CLG up, EG up. Is like your like jumps.
Yeah. Dig down.
Okay.
But we'll get
that's
there
what I was gonna say. Well, we can go there if you want. I mean, we can go there later.
I mean, that's all the way to the bottom.
Yeah,
let's do TSM FlyQuest stuff first.
Yeah. TSM is a good place to start.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we were talking before the weekend.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I watched these games of Maple and Champs Queue. I'm super hyped. And Azael was like, I watched these games in Champs Queue. I'm not hyped. And we're like, wait a second.
This is more about the Swain.
Yeah. Where are you standing now on Maple specifically? Because that's the new piece here for TSM.
I mean, honestly, I feel pretty similarly coming out of it. I don't know. It was a little bit weird. Like the one game, was it the game against? It was the game against 100 Thieves where they had that like random wild goose chase where they all chased someday and then just like all died and lost the game. That was a weird one. I mean, Maple. I think like my read from Champions Queue was you're not going to dominate lane. You're going to be good moving around the map and playing that sort of style. The Galio game was like pretty forgettable from him, but like I think that's going to be the kind of thing he wants to play. It's like Galio and TF and like maybe Talia if people are willing to play Talia mid. He's pretty good at like Zoe and just like things that are going to move around the map. He's really good on Yone, but that was getting banned against him. I don't know. I thought he was like had an okay but kind of like forgettable debut. TSM in general just like did okay.
Yeah, it was basically Spica, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're watching those games, you're watching Spica.
Yeah. I think his Corky game, which I think was the Immortals one, had some good engages. Not engages, but like some okay packages to help in the mid to late game team fighting. So not what you should have been expecting, which is like
he's an upgrade for sure.
He's an upgrade for sure. I think you could make the case last split that Kaido/Takeover and everything else that was going on with that team, like they were like not even the 10th best mid in NA. Like there were academy mids that were better.
I think they should be separated, and I did think Takeover was definitely better than Kaido.
Takeover played all right in LCS.
He played all right, but I would still put a lot of academy mids over him. So like Spica's being paired up with not LCS caliber mid laners, and I think Maple is an LCS caliber mid laner, and you saw why Spica was MVP immediately again here, where he was hard carrying these games in the early game.
Well, and I think one of the things I will give a lot of credit to Maple for, and when I talked to Chawi, one of the reasons he was saying that they liked Maple and wanted to bring in Maple was that it was actually going to free up Spica to just like play the game, right? Because I remember we talked about this last week and we talked about this last split, or like Spica had his tweets where he was like, I wish all I had to do was just like play the game, like I'm translating, I'm shot calling, like,
he's making content.
I'm doing 3 jobs here, right?
He's
like,
still making content.
I know. Good.
Yeah.
The listen in.
Yeah, listen in. But I do think this is like some of that, right? And Maple's communication was like better than I thought it was going to be. His English is very basic, but even in Champions Queue, like he's very communicative, right? Like he'll chat a lot. So I do think that is possible, as part of the reason why Spica was able to play so well individually is that it's freeing him up. I know that was their intent. Of course, we didn't get to hear the comms, so like I don't know for sure, but this is what their coach is telling me. This is what I've seen is that Chawi is able to chat a lot, and if Spica can play like an MVP, the team is obviously just way better, right? Like he can get you a lot of wins, and I still have faith that this team could be like that, like 5-6 kind of range where I was putting them initially. My big concern is just like, oh man, Tactical had a rough weekend. clearly took it very rough, like tweeting out like, "Oh, I just suck," that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like you can kind of just like shrug it off with some players, but I also know that Tactical does seem to be one of those players that like takes the losses really hard. He is like very up and down as far as like performance based on emotion. Like even when you're like watching his stream, sometimes like you can tell when he's really in the zone. This guy's friggin' incredible. And when he's like in a bad place, like he plays a lot worse, I think. And so like he played bad at critical moments this weekend, right? Like got picked off multiple times with summoners available and things like that. The charm from Abadaga when he got caught by Dragon Pit on Ezreal was like a max range charm. He had shift and he had his flash up. He did shift, but it was like delayed, so he just got pulled back and died. But he didn't have a good weekend, and he needs to play better than that for them to win, like especially in late game situations.
And I would throw Huni in that needs to play better bucket too, because he was not impressive either. His Vlad game, he got killed a handful of times, even though they won that game. It was like, I think Revenge actually got kind of like they were picking on him to get for Immortals to get their advantages. It was he like face check Kenby that one time and just killed himself at red buff. They were like,
oh, that was so bad.
Yeah, there were a lot of plays like that.
I like wiped that out of my brain.
No, you can't wipe it out of your brain.
That was so bad actually. He like Oh, okay. Go ahead.
No, I was going to throw out the game versus Dokla as well. His Gwen was kind of getting picked on. I mean, the comp was designed to like go up there and kill Gwen. Yeah. But like that happened and he got a couple kills back. But like he's going back and forth with bottom tiered, probably 6 to 10 range top laners that he's going up against, And so that's just not good enough, I think, for this team to break out of that category. It feels like he's inconsistent. Tactical's inconsistent. Maple and Spica are consistent. It's just like they need someone else to help them out more often. Otherwise, they're going to drop a lot of games where even if they get leads, their side laners aren't doing anything.
Where do you see Huni, like as far as like top laners, right? Because like it's kind of like this. I had a discussion. I can't even remember who kind of like gave this to me, but anyway, I was thinking about where my power rankings were, and I always kind of had it like, okay, so I'm thinking Impact and Someday and Bwippo, and then I'm kind of giving benefit of the doubt to Fudge being up there, and then I kind of had like Licorice in the middle, and someone phrased this to me, and I've kind of reused it now because I really like it, where it's like Licorice is basically like the bar to like get into the elite.
I'm assuming you have Someday above that bar?
Yeah. So Someday, Impact, Bwippo, and then I was giving benefit of that to Fudge. So those would be the 4, and then like Licorice would be the bar who can like compete with those guys, but isn't necessarily as good as them, and can also like not be as consistent. So it's like, where is Huni even supposed to be, right? Like, is he supposed to be below?
I would put
bar?
him below Dokla right now too.
Yeah. Well, Dokla put himself
Big
like,
Dokes is up on
3,
top.
though. So where is Dokla?
Well, I think you're
Dokla's
always
the best
gonna
top in the league.
You're always.
But I'm just kind of curious more like, where do you guys even think Huni is, and where do you think he needs to be then?
I think lower half right now for sure.
And he has to like break past that bar, you think?
And he should be better, like by his own standard, he should try and be better than Licorice and like get into that more elite conversation, given that he's, world's finalist, multi-time champion.
MSI winner.
Yeah, like he's got such an insane career, he should not be middle of the pack struggling to be consistent,
Yeah, I think this TSM team has a lot of work, to do.
I put them 7th. I feel like this is one of the teams.
But also, this TSM team, they made like some little. It's really hard to make like huge sweeping corrections between spring and summer.
Yeah,
I kind of saw the adjustments here of them of like, oh, okay, we're gonna make some adjustments to do better in summer, but their big overhaul is gonna come next year. Is what I'm assuming.
And at least Spica is back to being a bright point. Like I really enjoyed watching him this weekend.
He was really
and
good.
I think he needed to come back. Not like anyone like I think I was doubting his skill, but just like fans were starting to be like, how'd he get MVP last split? Carried by, like PoE or like what, I don't know. But I'm glad to see him back. So
FlyQuest Immortals are the next 2 teams with 1 win. I had them and Dignitas as my bottom 3 teams. And FlyQuest was my biggest like move down from previous standings.
Hater.
Yeah, they were. So I kind of need you guys to sell me on it now because
what?
I put FlyQuest actually way down as well.
I put him 5th.
I was the
and I feel good about it.
I was the FlyQuest homer last split, and now I was
I dropped him like a rock down there with Immortals.
Do you regret it? Do either of you regret it yet?
No.
What? They should be 2-1. They should have slapped Immortals. They just had one bad bear in play.
So to
Immortals is my dead last team though.
to be fair, I do think Philip was better than I expected. But I do still think Philip may be a liability in lane. Like he was one of the worst laners in Academy top lane. So that was like my big concern, is that it was like this was, from talking to their coaches, a move towards like the future. They really liked him as far as like attitude and team culture, and they think that he could be building to be better than.
And whenever you hear that, you're like, well, you're sacrificing the present then if you're building for the future.
Yeah. And because he wasn't even considered a top laner in Academy, right? And if you want to like get up to like 5th, I think you have to be competing with those top laners. You can't just be a black hole against those guys, and that's my big concern. I will say Mark, though, he was pretty good this weekend and did have some good killer instincts. The was it against 100 Thieves?
It was the Golden Guardians Flash Camille game.
The Flash Camille game. That was really nice to see that he actually like went for some kind of more big plays.
And he is really young.
All right, so this is my 19. Y'all are selling them short moment.
Ready.
Definitely selling them short. They were dominating Immortals in that game. Like it was a horrible throw right over the Baron wall where
they're up 7K.
They're up 7K. Objective bounties are turned on. You get basically I think one person walked away, but you get wiped and lose Baron, and like gold shoots back in the other team's favor. Yeah. And I think that they kind of came mentally undone, and then they just lost that game.
I've been lobbying for objective bounties to be adjusted.
I heard you in the developer interview.
I tried to slip it in a little bit.
He slipped it in.
It's like, I think it's a good system, but adjust it a little bit, squeezed down.
So their early game, they're on average, I think, is like decent. I mean, they crushed 2 early games basically, and then I think they actually went tit for tat with EG a little bit. Given that we think EG is one of the best teams in the league, they were never in a winning position that game, but the Twitch was finding some pickoffs. They were making plays around the map. They were gonna
nameplates off. I thought they would have been competitive in that game.
Yeah, I think that it was at least a closer game than you would like. Oh, previous champion of the last split going up against FlyQuest. FlyQuest held their own a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think like you have one dominating win, one win that you should have dominated, and then you inted a little bit, and then like a close game versus a good team.
Okay, put that next to Immortals then. The other.
I agree with everything you said, but for some reason, I don't know. I just don't believe that Philip's gonna be good yet.
You don't why? It's like, forget Philip. Kumo wasn't that good, and they were still 5th last
Philip's
split.
Gonna be a lot worse.
I think Philip will be.
Do you have them over TSM and Golden Guardians?
Yeah.
I think those are the next closest competitors.
Yeah.
Okay, you have both.
I think they legitimately should be a 2-1 team right now.
Yeah.
And while Philip,
everything you're saying, but
you're nodding. You're like, makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
7th place, 8th place.
Yeah.
All right. So,
I heard you.
Philip, I agree with all your points about him, but to the killer instinct point, at least he can in team fights do his job.
Yeah. And he played pretty well the first week.
Yeah. And so like I think Jose and Takoya have largely picked up where they left off. They looked pretty good. Their bot lane is relatively consistent. Johnson's not a superstar, but like, again, kind of a role player. And so like, I think this team has better fundamentals with Afro at the helm and like shot calling and decision making. What's that?
And the meta fits.
Yeah, right. There's so many points in their favor. Yep. And again, they're not going to beat EG, TL, maybe C9 when they start playing better. Like by the end of the split, I don't know if they will be a serious title threat, but I don't see why they wouldn't be in the 5th, 6th category more so than the 8th, 9th based off this weekend.
Okay, who's the strongest Immortals believer then? Because there was a lot of hype with bringing in Ignar and Kenvi, and
it wasn't me.
I can't remember where I had them exactly. I think I had them 9th. Yeah, I think 9th. Yeah.
Okay, we don't have one. We don't have one then. There's no Immortals rep,
and they did not necessarily give us the tools to doubt ourselves. Yeah, I think.
So I was like, because Kenvi, he did so well in Academy, but I talked to a bunch of the LCS junglers about him specifically and how well they thought he would adapt from Academy to LCS. And I did not get a single answer from one of them that was super strong or positive. And a lot of them were press X to doubt. So that to me definitely was a big contributing factor of why I was like, oh, I'm seeing a lot of, Academy hype for Immortals and people, really like, oh, these are pretty big changes because, Ignar is also a significant change too, which I think is good. But maybe it's, people are playing on like the past synergy with Power of Evil or something. And It didn't quite come together for me.
I mean, they got perfect gamed game 1. Yeah. Game 2,
they beat Fly.
It's very early still.
They beat Fly, but that was the one where they're down like 7K or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that one, it's like if you want to take glass half empty, they shouldn't have won. But the glass half full is that the TSM game, I actually thought they were in a winning position, and then they just threw, so it's like kind of evens out a little bit. They could have easily been 2-1, but they also could have been 0-3, right? Like it's actually like wouldn't have been that shocking either way. I do think that Kenvi had some better games later, but it's also just like really hard because not only is the competition a higher level, but also his team is not going to be playing towards him in the same way that 100 Thieves Academy did, where it was like playing for him. And this is some of the discussions that I had with a few people where it's like he basically has to learn a new play style, right? And can he do that? Yeah, absolutely. I do think he's like actually a great talent. He was really impressive in Academy. And I remember we were joking about this because you were asking other junglers. I'm like, do people ever say anything good about people who play the same role as them? And you're like, well, no. So it's like.
But you can still like compare because they always will be like, well, they're not as good as me, but they're better than these others.
Yeah. And that's totally fair. But like some of the people I talked to, coaching side and that sort of stuff, most people were like, yeah, we think he's going to be really good, just like not right away. And maybe not on this team. Because Power of Evil has never been a guy.
Didn't he request to be on Immortals though?
He did want to go to Immortals, and he was the final piece of the roster. I don't know what other teams had offers, but he did have some offers, and he chose Immortals out of that and was that 5th piece. We'll see though. It's like they did also change 3 players, right? So it's like, to be fair, we should give them a little bit of time to see if they can actually get it together, because they changed their entire bot lane and their jungler. And I don't think that first week was like absolute disaster, but it also didn't make me like believe any more than I already did.
Yeah, and I think the Nocturne game was better, and you can blame Draft a little bit for that perfect game. Like, not that they were going to beat TL, but like it was Talio with no setup and like all range, I think. And it was like, okay, how are you going to get a kill early with this thing? And it just got crushed right away.
Yeah.
And so you can maybe chalk up some of it to, like you said, learning curve for both Kenvi and the team as a whole. I don't want to like write this team and him off entirely, but
what you got to do. Week 1, baby.
I'm just standing.
You saw a game.
I'm standing fast in my prediction. That's all I'm saying.
What was your prediction?
Well, we were all 9th and negative on them.
Yeah.
I just mean, like, I didn't see anything to make me doubt myself.
All right. I've been waiting for this. Down at the bottom of the barrel.
Those absolute terrible team.
So, yeah, this was my prediction that, again, towards the end of the split were our power rankings for.
Yeah, Cloud9 second,
I knew that Cloud9 was going to come in without multiple players. It was still up in the air how many starting players they would actually have.
Yeah.
So I was not expecting them to win week 1 Super Week, but I also knew that they were getting out of the way their games versus EG and Team Liquid, which are some of the most difficult opponents in the entire league.
Yep.
Early as well. And then when the full starting roster does get here, they're going to have time to ramp up, I feel like. And I do think that the full intended starting roster for Cloud9 is very good. I think that is going to be a very good team. It's just kind of a question of how long it is for them to reach that peak. And then, hopefully, obviously, it's, as playoff starts and stuff, and you see all the, rewards then. But I do think that them being down, tied for 10th right now.
They got that Golden Guardians game out of the way too.
Yeah, that really tough Golden Guardians game. How's that copium?
I do
There's
think
a lot
that
of copium in there.
You will not be seeing them tied for 10th or down at the bottom of the standings for long. I think it'll be a slow climb up, but it'll be a climb up the standings for sure.
I will say, I feel, even though I didn't really care that they lost the games because they didn't have their bot lane, I still am more down on Cloud9 than I was before.
Yeah.
I like, if I have to go like my stocks, it was like bot lane, who cares? Like, you weren't going to play with these people anyway. I thought they played pretty poorly.
Yeah.
Blabber was like pretty good. It was okay. Fudge, I would say my Fudge stocks went up a little bit. I thought Fudge might take a little bit more time. I thought like
sold all your Jensen stock.
He was team fighting well in the Fiora game. The Jensen, his Victor game, I thought he played pretty well. He got killed at the end, but like, who cares? It happens. Yeah. Like, his movement was good. He was farming well. He was putting a lot of damage in team fights.
How was Yone?
His Yone game was really disappointing. I thought, like, he did create some little advantages, like he forced some sums early, but then it felt like every time he went for something, he just like didn't connect with his ult or it just didn't work out or
snap
whatever.
Backs and then end up out of the fight or then go in.
They were just mechanical errors.
Yeah, like even as far as like the ordering of skills at times, right? So like his Yone did not look good, didn't create any sort of advantages. Like,
don't worry, I've gotten more copium.
Okay.
Another brand of copium for that. I'm the Cloud9 copium salesman. I gave you my generic copium first. Here's the Jensen specific one.
Okay.
Is that Jensen has always been a mid laner with a very particular champion pool and doesn't pick up champions very quickly. He's always, he's a very good mid laner, but throughout his career and his history, he has never really adapted
like Mr. Oriana and stuff.
He hasn't really picked up champions quickly. And some of the most kind of sticky ones have been, Yone.
Fighters.
Yone was definitely one of the ones because I remember back when he was on Team Liquid and we had the meta shift to to the melee, mid laners, and Yone was a big one too. There were like jokes about
Yasuo, you mean?
Some of the scrims that they were having.
Or Yone was a big mid laner?
Both of them. It was when Lee Sin was also a mid laner, and like,
I was
it
thinking
took him a while to get his Lee Sin.
Interestingly enough, he barely has any Yasuo games, but he has a 71% win rate on it because it's probably all Diana Yasuo or Gragas Yasuo maybe even back in the day.
From his Cloud9 days, probly combining with
maybe the Gragas
like
Gragas Yasuo. And
but what's his Yone?
His Yone, he only has 3 games. He's
and
like
they
1
are
and 2. 1 and 2 on Yone.
Okay.
And then what was the
there was the Akali Aurelia.
Akali
is one of the champions that he has played a lot.
It was one that was that was in like the not good tier for him that he then made it good.
Yeah,
like he learned
but
it.
It's
slowly.
been good for a long time.
Yeah. This was like 20.
He put in the work.
Aurelia, he just never played. He had 4 games.
I'm talking about 2018.
This is the brand of copium is that he doesn't pick up the champions quickly. When he puts a lot of time into them, he's a very good mid laner. He can add them to the pool, but you don't see big adjustments quickly. There. And so maybe that has.
But were you not somewhat disappointed on his performance level?
No, I was gonna say maybe that has something to do with also coming back.
Yeah.
Because he was he was in Las Vegas partying with Bunny Fufu, and he coming back, even though he's been grinding champions queue, he started pretty early on. Maybe it takes a.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the anti-copium take, and it's still not that much anti-copium. It's not like I don't think that they'll be where I place them. I think to your point, if you went 0-3 and you looked like the EG game for the other two, I would feel a little bit better.
Me too.
Where the EG game was back and forth, you had some leads at some point, but the next 2 games were just not particularly close. Golden Guardians, they mostly got steamrolled, and we already talked about some of that stuff. The Team Liquid game, they actually defended their bot lane well. They had what I think was a scaling advantage, like a better team fight, team comp, and just the decision making, which I assume is not their bot lane deciding this. King loses his flash, Rift Herald drops mid, they break mid turret. You stopped for Hex Drinker, so your Corky's hasn't had his
shove their way to river.
They don't have their mana unit transform. He doesn't have his Ludens done. Twitch is on 1 item, and you're against a 2-item Ezreal. You don't have vision control. You double TP in, and then they just sprint it down river for the most brute force engage. They get crushed in like
flanked and stuff.
Yeah, and it was like, why did you do that? You could have just sacked that dragon. You were in a totally fine game state, and.
Yeah,
this is stuff that will get improved in time, but I think it speaks to the current level of the team right now, not being super in sync or like having a good read on how they want to play the game as a team.
Yeah. They also, for a bit of the tag on of the anti-copium or whatever, that it's always been a team that, of course, Blabber's super aggressive and they chase, I feel like, for a lot of team fights that they shouldn't be chasing quite as long for. That gets them into trouble, especially a lot of these dragon fights and stuff around river. There was one, they're chasing one side of this team fight and they group up for, I don't remember what it was, but this, giant AoE and it gets turned around on them. So that's another thing that kind of consistently pops up every now and then with this team is the over chasing for team fights in addition to the stuff you talked about, but gonna be a brand new world with
I don't care.
Omega 5-head shot calling Sven back here.
I know they were tweeting about how they're just turbo stomping scrims.
Yeah, it was all caps joke, so very clearly.
But I had heard very good things about Sven in general, and Berserker is obviously a beast. I think the team is going to be good. It's just like for me to think that they're going to win LCS, Jensen's got to be like, at a very, very high level. Not completely like selling him down the river because his first game was good, but the other two were forgettable, and the Yone one was maybe like, the Yone one was maybe memorable for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, I think the top side of the map,
that'll be fine.
You can't just pin it all on the substitute bot lane, but we still expected with Jensen coming back there being this like ramp up time needed.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say is we had Vulcan on Hotline League, and he was talking about playing with Blabber, and Blabber's the kind of person who will like try to fight his way back into a game or to like help a lane that's losing.
Yeah.
And so like in that second game, when they had like a bad gank down there, I was like, but isn't that like on Blabber a little bit? And he's like, that's just how Blabber is. And so like if your lane that's supposed to be winning, because it was like the Lulu Jinx lane that died and started losing prio, and he was trying to recover that lane, Vulcan was like, Blabber will absolutely like go down there and try and fight that lane back into their priority, And he was like, if you have a better bot lane, Blabber's decision making becomes a lot better. Like he's someone who plays with priority in particular very well versus when you don't. And I thought that was an interesting insight into like Blabber with winning lanes versus Blabber with losing lanes, because I think he's the most dominant jungler ever in North America, and I didn't see it this weekend, but I know he can get back there. So
well, it's a good way to play to win when you're losing, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of teams, when they start losing, they're like, all right, we're never
ignore that
fighting
bot
again,
lane,
right? And then they just slowly bleed out the game.
Yeah.
But that is a big reason I think Cloud9 over the years has had times where they're able to come back, is because they're just going to keep scrapping. But Dignitas, the other team.
Did you see anything in any of their losses that gave you a spark of joy? Did
Cloud9?
you feel joy? Dignitas.
Dignitas.
Ooh.
I still like River. I still like him.
Was there any joy watching River though?
Did anything spark joy?
I guess you
We're
could
gonna
say
go
it
with
was
that house cleaning.
It was a bittersweet being like River.
Condo or
Yeah.
You pick it up. River does spark joy, but it's bittersweet seeing him on this team. I think it was even Someone in an interview was talking about like the good junglers in LCS, and they shouted him out again.
Yeah.
He is very good.
Yeah.
But like
Keeping River. He sparks joy. Put him in there.
There's this weird thing where it's like, I feel like when I talk about like Dignitas is hurt because like they need River to play J4 and stuff. It's like, maybe you were talking about this,
Yeah,
but like,
Castle a bit.
but it's like, it's not because River sucks at playing scaling stuff. It's because Dignitas doesn't create their own advantages. They need
him to go early game.
Yeah, they need him to put their lanes ahead because their lanes don't seem to create their own advantages. But I will say, as much as it's maybe blasphemy to criticize River a little bit, man, he just absolutely sold Gamsu out. Like, he was just like, Gamsu gets like ganked like 400 times in a row. Like, he's not even there to help him reset the wave. He's never there to even help him, like, to cover him on a dive. Like, he just gave him actually zero help. And there, yes, like, he's supposed to be Mr. Weak Side top laner and blah, blah, blah. But like, you still need to help your top laner sometimes. And when you're playing a weak side top, you actually really need your jungler to come and unfreeze your wave, because that is the difference between like holding it close and them getting a freeze where they then over the next couple of minutes expand the CS advantage from like 10 to like 30, right? And that actually happened to him specifically. I want to say it was the TL game, maybe, but there was one game I was watching and I was like, River needs to go top and fix this wave, and then he just never did. No, it was who were they playing against? It was Sejuani versus Fiora. It was that game.
That was not the C9. No, that's C9. Who they?
Maybe you can look it up. My computer died.
Yeah.
My battery's out.
I'm looking at it.
But it was that game in particular where like he had actually kept it pretty close, and then Fiora had a freeze, and I'm like, oh, if he doesn't go up top, Fiora's gonna be up 30 CS, and then the exact thing happened. So I was pretty disappointed with how he played with him, which was just like never played with him. And even in the TL game, I think it was their first game, where that was the Mord game from Whippo. And like it was just the first couple of minutes, but like Gamsu was doing fine. And then multiple ganks from Santorin. Then Core JJ goes up. Like so many people are going up towards top, and he's just getting zero help at all. Of course he's gonna start losing and then getting slammed. So like Gamsu looked bad, but I also was like, you actually got no help from your team at all. So I almost felt like that was as much on his team as it was on him. But the whole Dignitas thing was a mess. They didn't really have anything going for them that.
I had them either 9th or 10th. So
yeah, I had a little bit more faith in them. That's one of the teams I saw that this weekend. I was like, yeesh. Yeah, it was the 100 Thieves game for the Fiora one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought Gamsu would stabilize top, and I would say in some sense like he kind of did. Like I don't know if there was much of a difference between like what he or Fake Guy would have done. I think I'm more disappointed in the rest of the team than Gamsu. I wanted their bot lane to do a little bit more. Just didn't get
Average
anything
goal
out of them.
difference of 15. They 2,500.
Dude, they're like if you go through their team stats, it is brutal. Like almost no kills or assists, massive goal
The
deficits.
party bus usually only runs in spring.
Party bus crash.
The party bus actually usually only runs in spring.
The problem is party buses don't get good gas mileage and prices are high right now. So
Yeah.
$7 bucks a gallon. So
yeah.
Oh,
You're
God.
getting like halfway downtown, stranded on the freeway
Oh,
partying.
God, no.
AC turns off because you can't keep
The recession is going to hit Dig the hardest.
Guys. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It was a
Stale
rough
beer on the
weekend,
highway,
man.
baby. Party bus stayed.
It was a rough weekend. I still think that like Dig could do a lot better, but I was concerned that like, oh, if River can't get advantages for this team, they're not going to really go much of anywhere. I did think Gomsu was going to be an upgrade top, but they've got to work with him better than they did this weekend.
The 3 Sejuani top games, like I'm not.
He played GP one game, but Sejuani twice.
I thought it was 3 Sejuani.
It was GP against Mord.
Oh, right, yeah. So the 2 Sejuani games soured me on the Sejuani top. I was like, this does not look good. Is it just this team or is it this pick? I don't know. It was tough.
I think the pick's okay. Talk to Alorum for a good 5 minutes. He'll be sweetened right up on that Sejuani top.
Ask
With
the one trick
melee
about his
junglers,
one
I think
trick.
it's actually pretty strong.
Yeah.
And I don't think it has. One thing I will say is it doesn't have to be like you pick Sejuani and then just AFK. I actually think
Has good gank setup.
Ornn is way better for that. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is that the gank setup's actually really good. Especially if you have a melee jungler, you can call him up there.
My favorite thing about it is the Rift Herald fights.
Yeah,
actually
2v2s, 3v3s are really good.
And there's a couple of melee mid laners that you can choose right now. It's definitely not great because
Yone is always banned, but
everybody's trying to scale. But if you have triple melee topside, that Rift Herald fight is
Free.
easy.
Yep.
For,
So I think Sejuani top's actually pretty good, but I didn't think they played around it well at all.
okay. What you got?
I was gonna
Spit it out, Mark.
I was gonna
You
ask
got one
about
more
Ignite because I was saying I don't think I love the Ignite.
I think if you're not gonna, your jungler's never gonna go up there. You should be playing Flash because who cares about Ignite later in the game for the most part. But I actually think Ignite is pretty good for like kill pressure. Like when you have good gank assist and your 2v2s and 3v3s are actually good if you have melee people up there on top side. So Ignite, if you're gonna fight, is actually good. I don't expect at the pro level there to be many matchups that Sejuani can just like solo kill them. Like it just shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So like. Yeah, I mean, if they're
It
never going
looks
to play
super troll
towards
if
them,
you don't get ganks.
yeah, if they're never going to play towards him, he should just play Flash for utility. But like again, if you pick this and the comms in draft are like, all right, I'm pathing top, and then you just never come, then who's it on, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, I don't have my computer is dead, so
Yeah, so
Kobe's got to do the
us out
toss.
of here.
Am I doing the toss?
you're doing the toss.
Dead.
I'm the only one doing the toss.
It's pretty easy. I could do it from memory.
7 minutes. Mention that we're going to have an edit here for league dev discussion.
Really smooth, Mark.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, presented by Players on Paramount Plus. Go check it out if you have not yet. As you can see, we've got a different configuration. Azael and I are not joined by Mark today.
Thank God.
Goodness. Right there.
Yeah.
Right there with
Got the
me.
mind meld.
But we do have two members of the League of Legends dev team, Phroxon and TrueXY. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk durability patch spoilers. Okay, you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Matt Phroxon Long Harrison. I'm the lead game designer for the Summoner's Rift team. We basically do game balance, preseason, item updates, rune updates, just things that aren't new champions, basically.
Cool, and I'm Tim, or TrueXY, and I've been on League for like 2 years, helping Matt do some of it, and I was one of the main designers on the durability update.
Nice, nice. Well, of course, that's going to be our first topic here. Durability update. Everybody is expecting, okay, it's going to increase game time, kills are probably going to go down. But I actually want your internal metrics and how they've actually turned out. Did this hit the goals that you had actually set for this durability patch? Because, yeah, I've definitely noticed longer games and more frustrating early.
Yep. Yeah, so we can talk high level. Kind of the main reason why we wanted to do the durability patch is because we kind of creeped damage in League of Legends over the years, not due to any...
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And there's a few reasons why this occurs. One of them is when we try and make new content, typically we try and make that exciting. oftentimes that comes in the form of, giving damage or giving burst damage. It's one of the ways that players find satisfying to receive power. Having said that, it's difficult to kind of keep that in the right balance, especially systems relative to each other. So there are a few things we kind of wanted to bring that back a little bit. We also wanted to bring snowballing back a little bit in the early game as well. Games often felt like they were out of your control too early. We felt like at the same time, we wanted to bring down the damage of classes that weren't specifically damage focused. So things like tanks or just champions that dealt damage like a Blitzcrank support would do more damage than you would expect.
Yeah.
So we kind of believe that we've hit a lot of those, and things like game time and early game lethality are still to be seen. What changes we're meant to do to put them in a good spot, and Tim can talk a little more to that as well.
Yeah. So if you want to talk like exact numbers,
Yeah.
12-10, the first time we did it, game time went up like 2 minutes, right? The games are longer, and then we actually saw, for solo queue. This is solo queue focused. Kills, overall kills went down just a little bit, probably about 2 to 3 per champion in your game. So if you multiply that by 5, that's quite a bit less gold, less pacing in the game. Makes a lot of sense. And then pre-10, pre-15, probably down about like half a kill, 0.6 of a kill, which is a decent amount of your percent early game gold. And so that's what we kind of expected, right? Obviously, if you give everyone stats, they're going to be harder to kill.
Yeah.
Kills are going to be harder to get.
Surprise!
Exactly. There's less gold in the game. So like there's a lot less kills.
Yeah.
How many kills, if you know, like what was the average? So you said like it went down about 2 kills per champion on each side.
Yeah.
So like 20 less kills in a game. How many kills were people getting on average in a solo queue game? Because I literally have no idea.
I need to actually find a number off the top of my head.
Was it like a
I can't
significant
remember
decrease? Because obviously like that changes context a lot.
Overall for percentage, it ends up being like, depending on your role and how much gold you get in the game, it's probably about like 0 to 5, 0 to 8% less gold over the entire game.
Okay.
So it's not like you're losing a ton. In early game, pre-10, I do know the average kills for like a mid lane assassin, mid lane mage, jungler, which are the higher level ones. Probably you're getting about 0.9, 1 kill pre-10 minutes on average. And so lowering that down by like 0.3, 0.6 is quite a bit.
Yeah.
It ends up being like 100 gold-ish. So we did see everything go slowing down. 12-11, where we did some other big changes, mainly the towers on the outer do less damage. Game time went down another minute. So we're about 1 minute above 12-9 for average game length.
Yeah, I think that was a good correction, by the way. Because on release with 12-10, and the towers are like two-shotting people.
As a kill enthusiast, I think you should have buffed the towers a bit more, you know.
The top lane enthusiast.
I only play ranked. It was my first ranked game. I went in and I went for a level 3 tower dive on big stacked lane on bottom lane. And we got triple killed and my team's flaming me already. And I was just like, just testing tower damage. Okay, it's high. Yes, very high.
Damage,
so, yeah, I was glad at least the outer towers got walked back. Because I know a lot of viewers as well, people still have this mentality of like, oh my God, I can't dive anymore. But actually, it does feel, just speaking from playing ranked games and stuff over again, now since on 12-11, I'm not nearly as frightened, and it's still very beneficial to go for early tower dives on the outer towers on big waves for your laners. So, is a relative power around.
For solo queue, our goal for the towers were to make them about the same damage to you relatively with the more resist, because you yourself are harder to kill. And so tower dives, it makes sense if they're a little bit riskier to do. They might have been too common on 12-9, but our goal wasn't to change that specifically with tower damage. Again, because as I mentioned, you're going to be harder to kill. More the agency is in your hands to outplay the dive. Rather than the towers just kill you in 2 shots when they're heated up.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's an interesting strategy tool for early game, especially to keep games exciting to watch for pro players.
Yeah, and a little bit more data, and that's what we saw is that naturally on 12-10, the best champions before the hotfix and before balance adjustments were the people who scaled, because those towers are stronger. It's harder to kill you at level 1 or 2. So if you're Azael and you're playing Kale, you can actually just sit under your tower and farm the entire game, and that's much harder to punish. Now, some games are going to go 0-6. It happens, but those games are
he does that.
Yeah, those games are much less common. And so that's why you see like Kale's win rate go up a ton, Anivia's win rate goes up a ton, Kog'Maw and stuff like that. Yeah. They naturally get stronger with scaling, and if you've seen the follow-up patches, that's why we've targeted some of them. We want to keep them late game scalers, but it needs to be a little bit more risky. And so if you see those nerfs, a lot of them are targeted toward, okay, their early game is a little bit more risky. You can't just sit there, you probably don't AFK, but sit there and just be safe and be protected and then just get all the benefits for no risk.
So, like, how did you guys actually see the durability patch like focus towards pro, right? Because like as soon as I read these updates, I'm like, towers are stronger, like people are harder to actually kill in lane, scaling is incentivized. If you're harder to kill, you're harder to gank. So farming is incentivized in jungle. Like all these things were just like, holy shit, we're gonna have like Ardent Sense of meta, right? Like were you guys concerned about that? Like what was kind of like the goals with pro, or was this much more like, hey, this is a great change for solo queue. We'll deal with pro later.
Yeah, I think it was definitely that that kind of frame of mind. This was definitely a change for solo queue. Having said that, we did try to be pretty cognizant of how it would affect pro throughout the whole process. Tim can kind of attest to, hey, we need to make sure that we have like mitigations in plan, just in case pro does slow down significantly, because that's a large portion of the League of Legends experience as well, right? So there are a lot of things that we were kind of thinking about kind of post durability update once we saw like how the changes had affected the pro meta. So Tim can talk to a few of those that we've been thinking about.
Yeah, I kind of like nailed it. For both sides, actually, we knew this was going to be a big benefit for solo queue. We didn't want to just disregard pro, but kind of like how we did champion balance, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. We can try to predict it, but if we do too much before it, then we're kind of just hiding what could actually be the problem.
Yeah. And anything that touches literally every champ in the game is impossible to balance.
So we followed up on champs pretty quickly. We do want to do the same thing for pro. It was probably a good bet that things are going to slow down. Kills are going to be even rarer in pro than they are in solo queue. And so what we did before is this is probably what's going to happen. These are the high likelihood ones. These are the levers and mitigations we can do. And if we see the magnitude that we think would be a problem, which we might be at, it might change, it might not, but we have a good accurate representation because it's on live now and we can see pros play on it. Okay, these are the levers, these are the things we can change that probably can affect the game in the better.
So obviously you also, in an ideal world, want the viewer experience for pro games to be super exciting. So I have a question specifically around scaling and the state of scaling and the difference between a champion that doesn't have any scaling, super early game, and the extreme of the most late game. We can keep using Azael, Kale play here.
A lot of Kale.
In my just personal opinion, I actually feel like it should be contracted a little. I don't like when there are champions that are super extreme scaling. Because just for the sake of argument, if I take it to the most extremes that don't actually exist in the game, if there is a champ that, level 18, you 100% of the time win the game, obviously that's not fun at all. So where do you think like the state of scaling is, and should it be contracted considering the last kind of two big updates, which were, to me, the bounties being added, so some comeback mechanic there, which also side benefits just generically scaling champions, plus now durability patch. Feels to me like two kind of system changes that have exacerbated this scaling idea.
Yeah, so there's a few things to unpack there. One is why a champion that kind of auto wins the game at late game is bad for the game, right? And the core principle there is interaction, right? We think that interaction in League of Legends is the thing that like makes the game exciting, right? And so to your point, it's like, okay, well, if you go to 18 and there's no interaction, there's no gameplay there.
If everybody in the game knows, all right, it's over, right? That's no
so
fun.
There's a few things there. One is like, is it a champion design problem, or is it like a problem with the actual concept of it? So I don't think the concept itself is flawed, but I think some of the ways that we tend to achieve it can be low gameplay. And so kind of the way that I'm thinking about it, at least, is how can we make scaling feel more interactive for for both parties. So like bounties are like are indicative of this principle, right? Most bounty claims are actually in the hands of the person who has the bounty. So like, let's say 8 and 0 Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix has a lot of agency to actually prevent the opponent from getting that and scaling, right? Objective bounties is like, okay, well, the team that's defending the bounties has a lot of agency in preventing that. So I don't think it's necessarily a problem with scaling. It's just that the scaling needs to be designed in a way that it doesn't feel like an inevitability, if that makes sense. So to use like Kale as an example, I think August, like when he was doing Kale, he was kind of a little upset about it when it came to the wild, because he was like, okay, well, Kale is like so useless early game that the late game has to be so strong, like an inevitability, like when you finally get to that stage. And that was one of his regrets, because he felt like he didn't deliver on that.
Right, you want to again kind of contract like the extremes.
Yeah, so to your point, I think, yeah, it's generally a good principle to like make sure that there's interaction along the entire way of the process, and then scaling is not so much of an issue. It's mainly an issue when it's like, okay, well, the champion is so weak in the early game that it has to win at late game.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it doesn't have the mechanics built in for that, then that's where we have an issue.
So to jump in on the like interaction, right? You're talking about like you guys want there to be interaction in the game, and that like brings me kind of to pro.
Yep.
Yeah.
So like I did a lot of looking at actual like game times and stuff across the leagues. I think most people's public perception is that the game's gotten way slower. It has compared to MSI, but MSI was very fast, and also there was a lot of like stronger teams beating up on weaker teams, which does increase the game time. So MSI stats are a little bit flawed, but I compared a lot of like LPL spring playoffs to LPL summer. LPL actually got faster. LEC spring playoffs to LEC summer. LPL or LEC actually got faster. LCS is very similar. The only one, LCS is like 10, 20 seconds apart. The only one that was a significant change as far as game time was the LCK, which is like a full 2 minutes slower.
What a shock.
They were already the slowest region. So I do think that like that is still a concern. But one thing that across the board is true is that there's just less kills in the game. So, LPL was already the bloodiest region. It still remains that, but it went from 30 average kills a game to 25. This is again playoffs to summer. LCS went from 26 to 20, which is like a massive drop off. LEC went from 28 to 23, LCK 26 to 21, right? So like these are 20-ish or more % of the kills reduce. And to me, like at least from eye test, interaction early game is at an all-time low, right? People do not seem to care about, all right, just give up not only the first 2 dragons, actually, we'll just give up dragon number 3 as well. Now, I don't necessarily think that's correct, but that does seem to be happening. And when there's not incentive to actually have conflict on the map, let's just be honest, it's just not fun to watch, right? Like when people are like, yeah, sure, like we're just gonna get 500 more gold top lane, or we're gonna take like a couple of your camps top side and you can have that 3rd dragon. Yeah, sure, you can have this, we'll take that. Like, so kind of how are you feeling about early game, especially in pro, and like pro in general, losing such a significant amount of kills, like, 20% or whatever-ish over across the leagues?
Yeah, I'll talk a little about high level, and then Tim can talk specifics. There's a few things there. One is what are the firstly, we're trying to think about like root cause, like why are the kills being reduced so much? One of those reasons is what does the meta look like? So we noticed enchanters kind of getting a lot stronger. The second thing is
enchanters because of, again, durability stuff.
Right, and it's like we wanted to make some preventative mitigations kind of before. If you noticed, we nerfed healing by 10% across the board, and we nerfed healing by 10 to almost 30% across the board. So the first thing is meta. The second thing is incentives for aggression. So these are things like early heralds, early dragons. We noticed at MSI a lot of teams were just giving up early dragons. There was a lot of debate about is it better to sack first dragon to take first herald? So those are the 2 main things, incentives and champion meta, and Tim can talk a little too.
Yeah, so I think the data you presented actually tells a really good story, right? Our game endings things, like these are going to be Baron, Elder, Ocean Soul, Dragon Soul, they work, right? And so teams are still fighting that, and the game usually ends quickly after. So the game time is not significantly changed, but as Matt mentioned, that risk reward of fighting, going for kills early seems off right now. It might change, it might not, but right now it doesn't seem as exciting for the players. And we want people to want to take risks getting kills in solo queue and in pro. That's what makes the game fun. And I think we have a few options we can look at. On the objective side, it might just be that the objectives are not worth fighting over, right? It's like, okay, if they're stronger at this point, just given the Rift Herald, it's not worth losing the game and losing waves and a bunch of kills and tempo for that Rift Herald, which is what, 2 plates right now if you don't do anything else with it. Or the first dragon buff, the second dragon buff, maybe even the third dragon buff, because it could be that risk reward thing is, if we go to that 4th dragon fight and we have 3 dragon buffs, but they have Zeri, Kog'Maw, Kayle, they might feel even, which doesn't seem right for the balance of those dragon buffs. So that's something we could look at. The other side is he touched on the chilling effects, which are enchanters have a lot of chilling effects when they're bot lane and strong and the dominant. We'd obviously like them to be a little bit closer.
Chilling effects, you mean like reducing action?
Yeah, exactly. So this could be enchanters probably aren't going to kill you in lane, especially in a pro lane.
They're gonna force you to base.
Don't talk to my bottom lanes, okay?
Yeah, I'm not gonna.
I try to tell them the same thing.
I know I play Battle Soraka and run in and kill myself, but you know, in pro that probably won't happen.
Yeah.
They're also worse at getting vision proactively because they still do die if you face check into 2 people, 3
harder
people.
all in. There's less engaged.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if you're disadvantaged at an objective, you're not going to be able to get and fight for that vision, so you're just going to give it more often.
Yeah.
They also incentivize, as a force multiplier, to play the scaling ADCs that aren't going to be as aggressive in lane. So you're going to play like Cog Lulu, we've seen a couple times, or mages and Seraphine, like stuff like that, not going to be that aggressive. So we could look at, and we're not opposed to drawing back Enchanter base durability. So maybe they're a little bit weaker in lane because they have such good upside. They're still going to feel more durable, but if a Nautilus is going to hit you or a Blitzcrank's going to hit you with a hook, and you're not going to ever die, then why would you not just play the super safe, low variance way? And so those are big things we can look at. It also just might be ganks are too hard, laners are too healthy all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, if I'm sitting on Corrupting Pot and 3 biscuits, I'm never getting to a point where I'm going to die to a gank. So we just farm it out, right?
So it's interesting too, because you mentioned a couple of like objective things that you can do to encourage people to fight over stuff. Would it be beneficial, and have you thought about just increasing the reward and incentive for a single kill on someone early? Like, if the reward on just killing someone is that much higher than just farming it out, it could be another way of like incentivizing, even like, oh, if you want more assassin picks back in, then you can actually get rewarded for, you know, more early game and more action to take place.
Yeah, so one thing is changing fundamental building blocks like that tend to have kind of really unpredictable cascading effects. So, you know, if we wanted to do something like that, we would probably want to try and make it more localized. So if it was just like, oh, like more incentives for assassins specifically to get kills, as opposed to buffing kills across the board, because kill gold across the board has kind of a lot of downstream implications on, okay, well, ADCs mostly buy damage, for example, right? And so they're not really buying durability with the gold, so it throws out the relative balance of like durability versus damage if we do things like that. So there's a lot of like kind of downstream, hard to predict considerations when we do changes like that.
More chaos, more action, baby, more blood.
I could also see it going the opposite way, where people are like, ooh, kills are worth a lot of gold.
Yeah,
I don't want to give up any of those.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you don't have the 35-minute first blood. You have the 42-minute first blood. You know?
If I die, the game is over.
Exactly, right? So like,
Exactly.
Because I think that would cause a lot of action in solo queue, but again, in pro, people are so like, you know, like they're always trying to play low variance.
Yeah.
I do think like also, I mean, you touched on a little bit with ganks, but like one of the things that I've heard a lot from pro junglers is just the idea that, okay, everyone's more healthy, everyone's playing more scaling. So when 2 people are playing scaling lane, there's less trading, everyone's sitting at full health, they're harder to gank. So the gank is less rewarding on average. And if I go for this gank, the other jungler's going to take my camps. Because at the pro level, people will always punish with cross-map plays and with invades and stuff. Which is obviously something that like happens in solo queue, but much less, right? People are worse at tracking what camps are up and like how many camps they've done. So people just tend to say, all right, well, I can go for this gank. Probably not going to work though. and then I'm going to lose Krugs, or I'm going to lose, Krugs and Raptors, or I'm going to get double scuttled, and now I'm down on the XP, and I can't fight for Dragon.
Yeah.
So people just say, all right, 6 camps, do scuttle, base. There are some teams that are obviously bucking the trend. So like theoretically, maybe some of the teams have the wrong read on the meta. I know I think there was a Broken Blade interview from LEC where they were saying like, no, they think you should be playing more aggressive, and they were doing this like Yone, Diana, Yasuo, like scaling stuff, but like aggressive. And obviously TL, I think most people would point to as the team that has looked the best in LCS, and they're obviously playing very aggressive.
Yep.
So it's not 100% that like everyone has the right read, but clearly like there is just less action. And like, do you think it's really mostly just, like enchanters are too good, and if enchanters are nerfed, engage comes back in and that changes things? Or do you think that like there's issues with risk versus reward for jungle at pro play as well?
I do think that. I think another thing that's worth unpacking there is just skill required to generate an advantage. So let's say that executing a play in general, like let's say a 3v3 turret dive, right? You need kind of to be either very ahead or have an insane skill gap against the team that you're playing against to execute those on the patch. This patch compared to last patch, for example, right? Previously, you could just be like, okay, well, let's focus this person, one-shot them immediately, and then it's instantly a 3v2, we drop aggro, right? Now it might be like, okay, well, we need to stay in a little longer. Maybe we're tanking one of those extra fatty turret shots, and we're potentially getting traded back on. So it kind of makes low variance, like easy to execute strategies, like more rewarded. I think that's another issue that's like kind of worth talking about. The other thing is just that I think Pro, as it's gone on, has kind of optimized out a lot of the interesting trading patterns. Like winning lane now is not, oh, did I kill them? It's, I got a good reset and I got good vision, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I haven't been like super
People
thrilled with.
usually.
Like exactly, like the evolution of League of Legends over time, right? It's not like season 3 clown meta, right? Like, and you're like, oh man, I'm just gonna stay in lane at low health and try and continue trading and like potentially die.
There are
like,
some of the best players in the world though do play like that, which is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of like you're talking about. It's just way easier to play this one style, and unless you think that there is this massive skill gap. But like, that's what makes I think some of those players so exciting at pro, when you have these players who are just playing like crazy people, right? Who are like going to trade on every single wave, are gonna try to push the pace, are gonna get down to 10%, but you're at 5%, and like, almost becomes that game of chicken. But it, like, if you're that much better and you believe that you're always gonna outplay them, I feel like that's kind of like almost the LPL mindset about a lot of stuff, and that's why there are more kills. Because a lot of people talk about, like, why does LPL fight over nothing? But having talked to some people and coaches and players and things like that, it's like a lot of times LPL coaches and teams are looking at it like, no, we're not fighting over nothing. Like, the whole point of the game is finding like winning fights and creating opportunities where we can basically outplay you, because like we're better than you, so like we're gonna fight over this pink ward, or we're gonna fight over this thing, because it's giving us an opportunity to like basically get an advantage.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a thresholded thing, right? It's like, okay, do you have the requisite skill to kind of play perfectly and be able to punish? If you're not above that level of skill, then it's better to play the safe strategy, right? And that's kind of it's a very interesting kind of meta effect, I guess.
And LCK is the inverse of that, though, right? Because LCK is obviously like historically like the best region over the last 4 years or whatever. Obviously, LPL has kind of passed them. But like historically, LCK is still the best, and they're obviously, even though they aren't winning as many international titles, they're still like in the finals and right there and in 3-2s and stuff like that. And they are the slowest region and always have been, right? They were the double Sightstone region in the past. Now they're playing 35-minute First Blood games and like 35-minute game time average, like way slower than all the other regions. So it's like kind of, like, are you guys okay with there being such stark differences between the regions, or like, is it a problem if there's one region that's like so slow, or if even a couple regions are so slow?
I think in general it's really a positive viewer experience for these different metas to play out. We kind of saw this at MSI, right? It's like, okay, well, LCK plays, in a certain way. LPL plays in a certain way. NA is picking a lot of Ornn and stuff. LCK was playing a lot of Caitlyn, right? It's like, okay, well, we could nerf Caitlyn because we suspect, she's strong in the hands of LCK, or maybe other regions will pick it up. But honestly, like, a lot of the time when these meta effects are playing out, it's just more interesting for everyone involved when they get to play out naturally.
Yeah.
And so, we tend to not, tip our hand too much when those things are happening.
Yeah, I definitely like to see it actually played out, so we have these differences that can then come together and you really figure out who's got the better handle on the meta. Circling back to the enchanters and something that is kind of tacked on to enchanters and the power that they've been gaining is the Grievous wound stuff. So like you said at the beginning, you did nerf healing across the board, but then it also reduced the effectiveness of Grievous wounds while then giving generic stats to the items. What was kind of the goal with that? Because it does feel like it kind of reduces the focus of that item, and makes it more generic.
Yeah, so there's a few things. I can talk to the high level and Tim can talk to the specifics, but generally we want to put Grievous Wounds. Grievous Wounds has been really powerful in the past few years since we updated it to 60%. We found that had some pretty negative effects on the League ecosystem in general. One was champions, when new champions were developed, their healing needed to be at kind of an unreasonable level when Grievous Wounds was not in the game, because when Grievous Wounds was purchased against them, then it would make their healing tools non-functional, if that makes sense. So at a 60% Grievous Wounds value, Mundo's healing needs to be so strong.
Around having a 60%
Exactly.
Grievous Wounds in the game because it's expected.
Yeah, and that's a significant tax on our ability to balance champions and make satisfying mechanics. So that's one reason why Grievous Wounds was being high didn't play out in a desirable way. The second is that, if everyone has to buy Grievous Wounds items because they're so powerful for the Grievous Wounds effect, then it just makes it so that you can't buy the items that you want to buy. I want to buy Rapid Fire Cannon. Oh no, I have to buy Mortal Reminder.
Yeah,
right?
It's not as fun.
Yeah, it's not as fun, right? So Tim and Game Analysis team and put a lot of thought into kind of how we were trying to balance Grievous Wounds, and we kind of let it sit in the wild at 50%, and we were like, yeah, we can probably take this down a little more, and then just try and balance around that. So
just to jump in, so do you think, I have two quick questions on that. A, do you think too much durability is tied up into sustain, right? And then B, when you're talking about nerfing Grievous Wounds so that people can buy more fun items, I totally buy that. But then why make the items generically stronger, right? Like buffing AD on the items just makes them generically good items, Hex Punk Chainsword or whatever it's called, right? It's
Chem
just
Punk.
It's just a generically super efficient item now, right? Mm-hmm. So isn't that kind of pushing people to just buying the items no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, if a Grievous Wounds item is so strong that you would just buy it for the stats, then yeah, we've done something wrong there. I think Mortal Reminder has, been this on Yasuo and Yone, for example, at some points. Morello's in the past has also been this. I think that's a pretty undesirable state. But the general philosophy is the healing in the game needs to be at a certain amount for a Grievous Wounds item to be optimal. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily at that tuning level right now, but that's the state that we want to go to. And it'll be up to Tim and whoever else is doing the specific analysis. On the items.
Yeah, so it's Tim's fault.
It's not Tim's fault.
When Fiora presses
it's probably my fault.
Heals for 1k instantly, it's Tim's fault. Exactly. I'll remember that in my next game. Next time it goes gorgeous.
Well, you're playing Kale. That's
he also plays Fiora, so you should be like, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, no. I think a big takeaway we can have from Grievous Wounds, beyond why we nerfed it, is that we probably agree that Grievous Wounds is healthier long term, at a lower, maybe even a much more narrow, it's not everyone can buy it level. I wouldn't say this is a perfect state right now, and this is not. Honestly, in an ideal world, we're not going to leave it in this state. So that's why it seems a little bit weird that we nerfed it and then buffed the items, because straight up at the time we were just we can have a small window to nerf Grievous Wounds because the game is changing so much.
Yeah.
And these are the quick stats we could do.
Yeah.
We would probably want to make either Grievous Wounds sharper, make the items more satisfying, make them less punishing to stack, so that they're just less generically if Grievous Wounds is bad, you just buy it for the stats, or if the stats are bad, you buy it for the Grievous Wounds. That's a pretty binary state that we don't really prefer in the long term. And so we're going to look at potentially finding better ways to have anti-healing mechanics in the game. It's probably not 0 Grievous runes. It's probably not 60. It's probably somewhere in between. And it's a really tough system because there's, I'm the one, we had to, when we did the durability update, I went through every single shield and heal in the game with our team. There's a lot, right? And you're touching almost every single champion in the game, even in minuscule amounts, and it pushes them a lot up and down. And so finding the greatest way to feel like you have a fighting chance against that team that has Soraka and 4 other healers versus the person playing Soraka and Fiora doesn't feel like, okay, they bought 1 item, I just am playing 20% of a champion.
FF.
Exactly, it's like, we're probably not there right now, and I don't think we're the happiest. I do think applying like the components might be a little bit weak right now, and they might not feel like they do enough. But also buying 5 of them is probably not the output we want either, because now you have 5 boring items and you're not cutting their healing by more.
You just get an enchanter, and then they can apply Grievous soon.
Exactly. So like that is like a potential avenue. I'm not gonna say that exact thing, but it's like, oh, maybe if like we expect 1 or 2 roles to have these exciting items within their own class. Like if the support enchanter item was really cool, it wasn't just press a button and give it to everyone. It's like, oh, like my tank with a cool thorn mail or my enchanter with a cool like Grievous rune item, they were the ones who were gonna do it, or it's on a few kits. That could be exciting. I'm not saying that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
But that is much less of a...
Don't promise anything.
Exactly. Don't expect it on the next patch, but it's like, that's probably better than being like, oh, everyone buys the Quicksilver Sash tax, or everyone buys the Grievous rune tax for Fiora. Now it's just expected, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I like, we've established and we have the internal data. The durability patch did in fact increase durability. Good job.
It did.
Slightly longer games, slightly less kills. I'd like a high level and kind of look towards where the next most immediate goals you have for where the game is going to go.
Ideal game state.
Exactly. But some kind of specific things that you want to hit, because there was one that I actually really liked the reasoning that was put. That was then pulled back was the lethality buffs that were right after the durability patch, which of course everybody I think was correct in reacting and being like, wait a second, you just wanted to increase durability and now you're going to increase lethality. It seems very diametrically opposed. But the reasoning of trying to have assassins build assassin items so that they're squishy and they're building damage, I did like. I don't want my assassins to be building Gorge Ranker to one-shot me and also have a lot of sustain.
Yep.
So is that kind of goal one of the ones that's still in the works in a different iteration maybe? And kind of the ideal state of the game, I guess. Where's our future meme of the perfect world we're heading towards?
So I think the ideal state is all classes have a unique reason for being in the game. They have a unique advantage that their class brings. And all the classes are relatively balanced against each other. I think that's kind of our short to mid-term goal. We're definitely not there right now, right? Assassins are in a dubious state. They kind of
some of them
half of them build fighter items, right?
Yeah, like Kiana and stuff.
Half of them are building assassin items, right? And enchanters are obviously being strong. But there's kind of a few things there. One is we are still planning to get rid of the fighter items on assassins. We don't think it's appropriate if they're tanky and still able to kill you. The second thing is we do want... One common misconception with the durability update is that we wanted to nerf assassins. Not strictly true. We did want to hit more of the instances where Blitzcrank is running at you with full support items and still just one-shots you randomly. So I wouldn't say that it was the primary goal to nerf either Blitzcrank or nerf assassins, that type of pattern, but it definitely wasn't purely to nerf assassins. It was kind of just to bring the damage down of everyone. And assassins are still meant to kill you, right? What is an assassin if they're not meant to kill you?
They're a fighter.
They're jobless.
Exactly. And that's kind of the world where we're in right now, right? And so it's we need to think very intentionally about the ways that we give assassins power, right? And I think what we did was we were thinking, okay, well, we could just give them back the burst damage because assassins are the class that's meant to kill you. And that was our original tactic, right? But then we kind of thought about it a little more and we're like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's actually not the best way to deliver this power. And so that's kind of why we decided to pull the buffs and just be a little more intentional about it, right?
Yeah.
Because, for example, let's say that we increased the move speed of all assassins in the game, in the early game, right? Just as a hypothetical example. Assassins get more damage off that, right? Because they're more likely to get
More
gold.
uptime.
They're more likely to get gold, which will give them more damage later in the game, for example, right? And so it's like we need to be very intentional about how we're delivering the power, what the power curve of that power delivery is. And so we're doing a lot of that analysis right now. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Oh, did you have something?
Oh yeah, I mean, he kind of nailed it, but assassins are like the talking point because they're the biggest one. But like, the long-term goal for the durability update is every class feels like they do something special, and that extends to their damage, their systems, and everything like that. It's like we buffed tanks on 12-11 because, well, they felt less special. Everyone was more durable, and what they bought in the shop was less valuable. They didn't feel like they had a place. Assassins, people are going to reference win rates a lot. We're just like, oh, assassins are fine. 80 assassins are fine. That could be true, but a lot of them have outlets in other 80 items, right? They could be building Black Cleaver, they could be building Gore Drinker and stuff like that, and that's a nice fallback. And if you actually look at the AP assassins, they don't have as good of a fallback if you're not like a Kali and can build like Demonic and stuff like that, and you see their win rates drop. And so they don't have a unique niche, and people want to play Zed and Kiana to have that satisfying strategic moment of like, the ADC stepped out of position, I'm gonna be playing a knife edge and kill them. And if they're playing like a fighter and they're playing like Riven or Fiora, that's honestly like just less fun for those players. And we want to make sure we want to retain that in the long term. And so that's going to be our long-term goal.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to talk to us and share all your insight. Yep. And now we're going to say goodbye. And through the power of editing, Mark is going to join us.
Thank you again to our special guest, Phroxon and TrueXY, for joining us. Let us know what you thought of it, and what are you doing?
Didn't do the regular outro.
This is the regular outro. And if we do more stuff with League devs in the future, that'll wrap it up for now. And remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive when we return. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm. And remember to submit your questions. We love hearing from you on Twitter, YouTube comments, or again on Anchor.fm.
We do.
The LCS continues Saturday at 1 p.m. PST with Dignitas vs. Cloud9. Don't miss the premiere of the Berserker Sven bot lane. We'll see you then.
See you then.